Episode 32 of The Burrows. Kevin Bunk, Michael Merlo coming to you every week for BTO Media all year round, talking baseball. You can find it on YouTube, Instagram Live, Spotify as well, and soon Apple Podcasts, potentially for this episode. Mike, a lot of stuff to talk about. The last time we did an episode, just the two of us talking about what's going on, was around Thanksgiving. And then we did the episode a week after that, Yankees Plan B episode, which still is in effect. We have a couple moves that have hit from that. So we're still, at least I'm still referencing back to that. But this is the first time now in about 5 weeks since Soto signed. This is the first time now that we have actually sat down and are just going to discuss the free agent moves. And I think moving forward, this will start to become more frequent instead of taking 4 or 5 weeks off, which we decided to do after obviously doing an episode a week or more every season. So, Mike, last month, now it's 2025. What are you looking at? Baseball moves, Burns signed, everybody signed, everybody that the Yankees wanted signed, everybody that the Mets have wanted has not signed. What are you thinking?
Yeah, first off, Happy New Year to you and everybody else.
Do you do resolutions? Are you a resolution guy?
I try and stick to a couple. I mean, we'll see if they stick. Early on, I'll say, I'm going to do this, and then it probably doesn't happen. So
so you're in the boat with the other 350 million Americans.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so, Kevin, the Mets aren't done. I mean, the Mets have a lot that they need to add still to this team to make sure that they are, a World Series contender, and there's still a lot of free agents available. For the Yankees, I think their big moves are done, right? You're going to see a couple of moves around the edges, and that'll be about it. But they've made their big splashes already, and they've, sort of replenished their team after losing Juan Soto. So I think for the Mets, it's more of a, hey, we still need to fill out our lineup. We still need a big bat behind Juan Soto and a couple of other moves to that bullpen and things like that. So the Mets certainly aren't done. I think the Yankees have done most of their big time work, though.
All right, we're definitely going to get into the Mets and the Yankees soon enough, probably in the next minute or two. But let's just recap quickly a couple of the big moves. I think the Diamondbacks were a team that has woken up while we've gone dormant here on the Burrows. You had the Josh Naylor trade. They lose Christian Walker. He goes to the Astros. The Diamondbacks also signed Corbin Burns. Do you still agree with the sentiment that I don't know if you totally agreed with, but I did and still do, that Burns may have been the third most desired pitcher on the market? Or do you think after seeing that contract, he was in fact the most desirable guy?
No, I think, especially with the way the contracts went, I think he was probably second or third. I definitely preferred Snell to everybody else.
Yep.
And then I think Fried, Burns was kind of a toss-up, but I certainly preferred Snell, especially with the contract that he got. Yes, it's a higher AAV than most, but is it higher, or is Burns higher? Burns' AAV might be higher. Either way, I trust Snell a little bit more than everybody else. But yeah, I agree with you. Now, listen, we look at the contract and, it's a 6-year deal. It's not a 7 or 8 year deal. There's an opt-out after 2 years. He might exercise that, right? Depending on how the first 2 seasons go. So it's a weird contract. It's completely out of nowhere. But, we're going to talk about the D-backs. Kevin, they were a game away from making the postseason last year. And now they add one of the better pitchers in baseball. They replaced their first baseman they lost with a pretty good first baseman in Naylor. I mean, they dealt with injuries last year. They were up and down. But if you're looking at the National League, it just got a lot more difficult because a team that barely missed the playoffs last year got a lot better.
Well, you look overall, I put out a tweet a week ago about this, and I know I'm not the only one saying it, but in the case of the Yankees, that was the perspective I was going from, but you flip it to the NL, Kyle Tucker is a National Leaguer now. Corbin Burns is a National Leaguer now. Josh Naylor is a National Leaguer now. The only player that has really crossed over that is significant that's not a Yankee, so you can count Bellinger, you can count Fried, but it's Christian Walker. And so you're not really sitting here saying the AL is getting any better after a terrible AL last year, and you're looking at the National League and saying, oh my God, there is like an MVP candidate on at least half the teams. And out of those teams, some of them have 3 or 4 guys that could win it.
Well, especially if you look at the National League, like look at the teams, I still don't fear anybody in the Central, right? There's 3 teams in the East, right, that you're like, oh crap. And there might be 4 teams in the West, Kevin. There's definitely 3 where you're sitting there saying, okay, yep, they could cause some trouble. And depending on what the Giants do the rest of this offseason, they already added Adames. They could be a team where you're saying, okay, they could sneak into the playoffs. So there's a lot of good teams. It is scary how good the National League is.
Yeah, it is. You have the Phillies, Braves, Mets. Obviously, you're going to be in a dogfight there. Any of those 3 teams can win the division. Any of those 3 teams, I know we're down on the Phillies. Any of those 3 teams can go to the World Series.
Go to the World, yeah.
If you were sitting here the last week of October and the Phillies were in, you're not surprised. And especially with the Mets and Braves, you're not surprised. And then the Nationals, too. I mean, this is a competitive team. This is a team that could compete and could possibly, be in the playoffs in the American League. That's one of those teams that I look at in the NL and say, if they were in the American League, I think they could get in.
They're going to be sneaky good, and they're going to be a pesky team that you don't want to play. The Marlins are going to be terrible, but that's going to be a team in Washington where you sit there and say, they probably finished the year with 75, 77 wins in a really difficult National League, and you're going to say that was a good year from Washington.
And then you have, even in the Central, you have the Cubs who get Tucker, but you don't love them. You're right. There's no one in the Central that you're really fearing too much if you are a contender. And then in the West, Mike, this is such a gauntlet, dude. This whole league is such a gauntlet. Dodgers, Padres could both be in the World Series. How many times do you walk into a season and say there are 6 teams that I would not be surprised if they were in the World Series, or 6 teams that are almost as good as the typical World Series favorite in a single league? And then there's another 2 that you're saying, if things go right for them, if things fall their way in their own clubhouse, they're going to be a 90-win team and have a chance to make noise in the playoffs. Because that's San Fran. That could be Chicago, possibly. That could even be Cincinnati, possibly. But, yeah, this NL is insane. And you look at the AL, and it's just like, what is even happening here?
So take the Yankees out of this, all right? Because the Yankees are clearly the top team in the American League still. So go through the National League teams, and how many National League teams would you rank ahead of the second team in the American League? And tell me where the Yankees would fall into that as well. But like, how many teams in the National League would you take over the second team in the American League?
Well, first of all, who is the second team? Is it Baltimore? Is it Boston? Is it Cleveland? Is it Houston? I think it's Houston.
All right. If you think it's Houston too, then I'll say Houston.
So we'll go with Houston. Say they're an 88 to 91 win team.
Okay.
I think Philly's better. Atlanta's better. New York's better
in
the NL. I think Dodgers, Padres, Diamondbacks are all better. So there's an easy 6 for me. Easy 6 better than Houston, I think. And then, do you want to say Milwaukee, who just won 93 games? I'm not going to go there. They just lost
Williams I think you'd have to say them.
But they just lost Williams and Adames. So I think they're due for a 5 or 6 game decrease going into
that still might win the division.
It might, but that's not better than Houston for me. But either way, this is the
sorry.
We're having.
Yeah,
these are the conversations we're having, anyways. Maybe the Cubs. I don't think the Cubs, because you lose Bellinger. I don't think that you're that much better after the Tucker trade when you consider what they've lost. They don't add anybody.
I agree with you. 6 teams.
6 teams, definitely. 6 teams, definitely. But there really is a chance for San Fran to be as good. There's a chance for Chicago, for Cincinnati to be as good. It's a crapshoot, man. And when you look at those 6 teams, then you have to say, well, which ones are the Yankees even better than? Because I think the Yankees might be worse. The Yankees are weird for me right now because I could see them winning 100. I could see them winning 90. And so I don't know where I stand on them completely yet, but they could be worse than all 6 of those teams too.
They could be. I think they're in the middle of those 6 teams, depending on how you rank them. So obviously the Dodgers would be 1. I would say San Diego would be 2, Atlanta 3, and I think the Yankees and Mets would be right there in the next 2. The next 2 teams would be where I'd have the Yankees and the Mets.
Arizona, Philly, definitely at the bottom.
Yes, I would agree with that.
All right,
Philly's weird. Let me ask you about Philly. Can I ask you a question? Because I've seen a lot of Philly fans, and I'm almost going to defend the team right now for a second. I've seen a lot of fans this offseason say they need a ton of change, this and that. And I understand why they're so upset with how they went down. Their approach was not good against a bad Mets pitching staff towards the end here. and I understand why they're upset. But this team has had a really nice run of success. And yeah, there's older players, but they've spent so much money on this roster. Did you really think they were going to come in here and blow things up and make a huge move? Yeah, I never saw that. Like, the team is still good. I think they're hamstrung on a couple of contracts. Do I think they're the favorite to win the World Series? No. Do I think they're the favorite to defend their division title? No. But are they still going to be very good and compete for both of those things? Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. They will, and they'll win 90 games or 88 at least. They'll be one of those 6 teams that are in unless they have a significant injury. But you're right. There's just nothing for the Phillies to really do at this point. You're not moving Castellanos. You're not moving guys making big money that are underperforming. You're not moving Harper. So I don't know where you think the money is getting moved out of. You're not moving Wheeler. You're not moving any of your good pitchers. So the money's not able to be moved anywhere because you either have players that you need to keep or players that no one's really going to take on when considering there's free agents half as valuable that produce as much. So you're right. I think Phillies fans probably losing to the Mets was the worst part of it for them, losing to the 6th seed Mets who had the bad start to the season. And it's obviously a big rivalry that was renewed this year.
Losing to the team that they were the last 2 seasons, essentially. That's what hurt them the most.
Exactly. And the Mets are always considered to be little brother in that division. Mm-hmm. And they are to Atlanta. I don't know if they really are to Philly.
No.
But that's how Philly fans feel. So to lose that game, lose that series was just emotionally destructive if you're a Philly fan. And I get that. I mean, we've all been there where you lose a series to a rival that you don't think you should have, and your offseason's just ruined because of it. But they'll be good. I mean, we'll be sitting here in August saying Philly's one of those 5-6 teams in the whole league, not just in the National League, in the whole league. We'll be sitting here saying that because they got a great ace, they got a good staff, they got a great lineup when they're going, and at the worst, the lineup's good. It produces at the middle of the pack at the worst. So Philly's going to be fine.
They might have the best rotation in baseball, especially with Luzardo. When you even bring that up, Luzardo got traded around Christmas. If they can unlock a couple of things in him, he's a really solid 3, great 4 starter.
So you got to be looking at Philly saying they can't do much more. I think they're going to be big players next year in the offseason. If we want to talk about splash moves, I think that you look forward to next free agency with Vlad, Tucker, and that group. Those are the headliners, but there's a lot of good guys beyond just them. That's where Philly will be major players, and you have to see how this year turns out for them as well.
Yeah.
Good,
agreed.
Good point there, though. And then you look at Atlanta while we're talking about the division, just Atlanta here. Mm-hmm. To me, they're the number 1 team in this division. Banged up last year, wild card team, easy first round exit. They were the easiest out of that first round, really in all of baseball. They just did not feel like they totally limped in with that doubleheader at the end of the season. You know all about it. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is. They're done. They've been the best team in the league, though, the last 3-4 years, and along with the Dodgers. So I expect them to be the best team. But do you think the Mets, obviously the Mets could literally get there and wins. They could win more games right now just because that's how baseball goes. But do you think the Mets bringing in Alonso here or bringing in one more bat, Bregman, Alonso, whoever, then do you think they're better or no?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so on paper. The Mets could do more and still, I would say they're better. I don't think the Mets can do that. Unless the Mets brought in Alonso, they brought Winker back, and they signed Sasaki, which I don't think is realistic, then I would say, okay, maybe the Mets are better on paper. But if they don't do those things, the Braves are probably still going to be better on paper. I'm just a little concerned. You have a lot of guys coming off of either bad seasons, injuries, I shouldn't say bad seasons, down seasons, up in age, and guys who have been injured a lot coming back. Those are my concerns with Atlanta, but I trust that they're going to come back and still be that dominant team. Do I think they should be considered the favorite in the National League? Absolutely not. The Dodgers are still the top team. I would probably still take San Diego as well, as long as they bring back Tanner Scott. I think it's a big move for them to make. And if they do those things, I think Atlanta's third here. But in the National League, they're the favorite in my mind.
All right, so with Alonso, where are you at there? Do you still feel as if he's a lock to come back?
No, I don't think he's a lock to come back. I think it's not a lock. I still think it's like the more likely option, but if a lock was like 80% or higher and likely is anything over 50%, I'd say 51%. That's how I feel. I'm not as confident. I think the Mets are serious. And I brought this up to you like a month ago over text. I was like, Bregman or Alonso, because that's the conversations the Mets are having right now, Bregman or Alonso. And there are some benefits to bringing in Alex Bregman over Pete Alonso. Mm-hmm. Bregman's a better defender. He plays a more valuable position defensively. You can move Vientos over to first base. Bregman's a great postseason player. He's clutch. And he's had very good offensive seasons. Terrible start last year, finished the season strong. I think Bregman's a viable option here to be brought in, and that's what the Mets are considering. And I'd love to get your opinion here almost a month later after I asked you.
I think that Bregman's the better player. I don't think, at the time, I thought there was a chance the Mets got both. I don't think that's even in the cards now. That was just a moment in time for me. And Bregman's a better baseball player. So I'd rather go Bregman if you can evaluate your clubhouse and say losing Pete wouldn't affect it. If losing Pete would negatively impact your clubhouse to start the season and it could result in a slow start, if he's that important to your team, if he's that much of a leader to your team, then I'd say you got to sign Pete over Bregman. I don't think that's the case with Alonso. I think we've spoken about this a bunch of times where, Pete, nice player, really good player, homegrown guy, so there's a fan attachment to him. But as far as in the clubhouse, I don't know if there's really much of a sentiment among the other guys that Alonso is the leader, that Alonso is the glue guy. He's not. It's Lindor's team. It's felt that way now for 2 or 3 years. He solidified that last year. Nimmo's team. And now it's Soto's team more than Alonso's as well. So I don't even know where he stacks up in this whole thing. And I think that would be a problem for him emotionally in coming back. He does feel as if he's been, I don't want to say this in a negative way to the organization, but it feels like he's been cast aside, left out to dry because of the attention that they've been giving to other players, and they should. Juan Soto's a much better player and a younger player than Pete Alonso. It's not like I'm saying Steve Cohen, terrible job treating your homegrown players this way. He's treated them well. They want him back, I think, but I do also believe, Mike, it goes back to what I said earlier in the offseason about the Yankees and why I'm not upset with the Goldschmidt move, which we may or may not talk about later. I don't know. But you want to participate in next year's first baseman offseason. When you have an older first baseman right now, you don't really want to commit to 4 or 5 years with him. Go get Bregman. It doesn't hinder you in next year's offseason in any way. Bregman is a guy that you want on your team beyond this year. Alonso is someone that if he had a bad walk year last year by the standard of a walk year, and by his career standard, bad year. So if he has another one of those years, you're going to be sitting there in November saying, man, and you don't win the World Series, you're going to be sitting there in November saying, I really wish we can go after Vlad or Naylor here because these are younger players who are better players, and we have the money to do it, but now we can't because we're giving $25 million to the first base position already.
Now, if Alonso is brought back on the contract, which was reportedly offered to him, which was 3 years, $90 million, which would have made him the highest paid first baseman per year, then I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with a 3-year for $90 million. But you start talking about 5 years, $120, $130 million, and it's probably more than that, right? The asking price is probably just way out of left field with Scott Boras as his agent. Then, and that's a conversation I want to have too, by the way, about Boras. But if I'm the Mets and I'm Stearns, as much as I want to bring him back and feel the pressure of the fan base to bring him back, I'm sitting there and I agree with them as much as I want him back as well. Like, hey, I can't do that. Like, that's not how I run a baseball team. And Stearns is a very successful executive and he knows best. And I would agree with him. Giving a player like Alonso a 5 or 6 year contract like that at the kind of money he's asking for is not good business.
And I'd be sitting here saying, just as a general manager personally, once again, not throwing digs at the way the Mets operated with Soto, but I'd be saying, I've already given out one contract I really don't love long-term. And Stearns has to think this way because he has to imagine he's in this job for another 6, 7, 8 years. David Stearns cannot be operating in a win now. Obviously, they are win now, but he can't be operating in a, oh my God, my job's on the line. I just have to put the best team on the field in 2025.
Like Dombrowski does every year.
Exactly. He cannot operate as Dombrowski does every single season. So Stearns has to be saying, I already gave out one contract I don't love to a player who is similar in archetype, right? Not athletic. He's not an elite defender, really good hitter, going to be a highly productive hitter in the top of our order. Alonso would go in the middle of the order, but I don't know if I want to commit to Alonso. I'd feel much better about trying to piece together first base with Vientos, with Bregman, add another bat, maybe bring back Jesse Winker just to be your extra bench bat so you have lineup flexibility, and then go into next year with a clear checkbook at first base. I'd feel much better about doing that than bringing in Alonso. But it's a tough situation, Mike, because your fans love Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso's moment in the postseason, his multiple moments in the postseason, but his moment against Milwaukee is one of the all-time Mets moments. And he's a homegrown player with every stat imaginable through X amount of years playing. What has he been in the league? 6 years now? 5 years, 6 years? He's like every production stat is quickest to this, quickest to this, quickest to this in games played. Alonso is first or second in everything.
Yeah.
So this is an emotional attachment with your fan base too that you have to gauge a little bit, because are you going to be pissed on June 15th if the Mets are 500 and you're getting no production from your first base position, or Vientos is losing games with his glove and Alonso's in San Fran having one of his usual 40, 45, 50 home run seasons? That's going to be a little frustrating.
It's a tough call. It's a really tough call. And then
it is.
And then we have to talk about the contract Bregman's going to get. I mean, Bregman's going to get close to $200 million.
Yeah, and Bregman, I do not. All right, because I just said it with Alonso, so I'm going to sound hypocritical because I'd rather have Bregman for the next 2-3 years. But the back end of the Bregman contract is one of the back end contracts that really frighten me, because I do not think he will hold up well. And I don't trust guys leaving Houston, leaving Tampa Bay, leaving a couple of these franchises. And Houston is at the top of the list. Atlanta is one of those teams. But number one on the list is Houston. I don't love guys leaving there and having prosperous careers after. George Springer, very disappointing in Toronto overall. Carlos Correa has not been the smash hit in Minnesota that we thought he would be, or that everyone now thinks he will be. I see people saying, why don't the Yankees trade for Correa? I don't want Correa for $37 million a year.
Yeah.
So Bregman, I think, trends in the same way, but at the same time, there's so many things with the Mets, because Cohen's worth $25 billion, just short of that. He'll be worth $30 billion by the time the Bregman contract's done.
The thing about it's funny you brought up, he's giving out these contracts. You got to see like the Mets fan pages on Facebook, on Twitter. It's, people are pissed at Cohen. They're like, you gave Soto $700 million. Just give Alonso $200 and call it a night. Like, they think like this is fantasy baseball and they should just give Alonso whatever he wants. And
have you watched Soto or Alonso play baseball? And you're upset that honestly, Juan Soto might be worth 5 times, because that's almost what he got, 4 times what Alonso gets. No, he's going to get, like, if Alonso gets $100 million, that means Soto was worth 8 times what he got on the open market. That might be an accurate valuation. That's how great Juan Soto is.
And people are going to say that the owner's cheap after he re-signed Manaea, by the way. He re-signs Manaea, too, for a $75 million contract. So it's hysterical, and I can't wait to see how this plays out. Kevin, Boris used to be this super agent. He's considered a super agent. But for these mid-level free agents, he stinks.
Oh, he's leaving him. I feel like he leaves him out to dry. He puts him on the back burner completely.
Why, if you're Alonso, seeing what happened last season with guys like Bellinger and Snell and Montgomery and whoever the other one was, Chapman, would he, like, that's the level of free agent that Alonso is. He's not, I know Boris is an agent. He's not a Tucker kind of guy that no matter what is going to get a $400 or $500 million contract. Obviously Soto, he's not an A-Rod. Like, why go to him?
And that's also the greatest problem for Alonso's free agency when attached to Boris, was he lined up with Boris's greatest client ever.
Yeah.
So you were never getting the premium attention right out of the gate of free agency. And then you fall into a group of guys that Boris is still going to make nice money on, but he doesn't need you to be one of the highest paid players or the highest paid player at your position or break the bank with your franchise. Because Alonso wants Boris to go back to the Mets and say, hey, we really want to get this done. Can you sweeten up a deal for him? And David Stearns has every right to say, no, I just gave your client $800 million. I'm not sweetening up a deal for Pete Alonso.
And now, but the tough part is Stearns has to make a move. Like, if the Mets don't get one of Bregman or Alonso, like, I'll be one of those crazy fans that say, you know what, you kind of screwed this up a little bit. They need to get one of these guys to protect Soto here. And I think they will. But now Stearns has to go back to Boris and say, well, what about Bregman?
Yeah. Yep. And there's a lot of competition for Bregman right now. I think that that with Alonso, there's just a couple teams looming, including the Mets. I don't think anyone's really putting their foot on the gas. But I think with Bregman, you have Detroit really wants him. I don't know if they're able to financially come to the terms, but sitting down in a meeting with AJ Hinch is not going to hurt Bregman's chances of going there on a few million less or a year less. It might not get the job done, but it's not going to hurt it. There's definitely a few teams here. There's always a mystery team. You might have the Red Sox in here based on what everyone says. Toronto seems to be offering every free agent the biggest contract that they've ever looked at, and they can't get anyone to go there.
That's fascinating.
Which is tough. I mean, that's a tough ownership position. If you are offering he's trying to compete in payroll with the Yankees, Mets, and Dodgers.
And he has the money to do it.
He has the money to do it. He's offering the money to do it, and no one wants his money.
It's crazy. I feel bad for them. I do. They offered Burns 7 years, $250 million.
Yep. And I guess with the Canada income tax, it's like a total wash of a deal with the Arizona contract too.
Yeah, that's 210. It's
that's
brutal.
A really tough spot.
I wanted to say something about...
But Bregman competitors, back to before my sidetrack, the Bregman competitors, you have a lot. So the Mets are not in a position with Bregman, at least, if he's the player they prefer, to say, oh, we could just wait him out here and see if his market drops. His market's not dropping. His market is happening. I think he signs in the next couple days because his market seems to be coming together with a couple different clubs now.
And the one thing about Alonso is I don't think his market's coming together. But I had spoke to you, and I said all it takes is one crazy owner to put a crazy deal on the table for Alonso, and he's gone. And but when we spoke about this like last week, 2 weeks ago, there was no team that had a crazy owner that I thought was willing to do that. Now, yesterday, according to Heyman, and this could be a complete, fake news kind of situation from Boris, but the Angels are interested. And Artie Moreno is that crazy owner that would do something sort of stupid and giving Alonso a crazy contract. So that's the one team now that would scare me here. And by the way, Artie Moreno is one of the owners that voted against Cohen when he needed approval to buy the Mets. So that's something I would keep in the back of my mind. If there was a team I'm scared of now, it would be the Angels.
Yep, good point there. The Angels definitely are a team that if they were to jump in, that's why they could be a leverage play too. You're right. All the reasons you listed. Cohen knows he hates him. Moreno's one of the ridiculous owners that might just drop a $120, $130 million contract out of nowhere. But I like the fit with San Fran only other than the Mets. If he was to leave and go anywhere other than San Fran, I think that it's just stupid career-wise for him and production-wise. I don't think that he'd be very good. But San Fran's been looking for that power hitter now for a while. San Fran has looked for that guy in the middle of their lineup that could change the game with a 3-run home run, and they haven't been able to find it. Right-handed bat, you put the first baseman, they don't have a first baseman, you just got Adames. Alonso fits in San Fran, but to the point of the leverage play with LA, if it is a leverage play, how much leverage can you even get over the Mets? Because I don't think that they really want him to the point where they're going to sweat if they lose him. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. Trying to find the Zips projections. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And I can't find them. Oh, here they are. All they have are the Cincinnati Reds. It's the only team they have. Oh no, here we go.
It's January 2nd, 2025. You gotta give them a few days.
But you have one team?
Yeah, that's rough.
Whatever. I'm trying to look at like what their lineup would be, the Giants, with him. Because you're right, it does make a lot of sense. It could make a lot of sense.
I love how you said, this is such a backtrack, that Facebook Mets fans are upset about Cohen, as if there wasn't a time within the last 5-6 years where Jed Lowry was the big free agent, and
do you remember
that had to get people excited?
Christmas of 2020? I want to say it was the Mets posted a collage. They made like 3 splash signings in like 1 week right before Christmas. Dellin Betances, Rick Porcello, and Michael Wacha.
Hey, Porcello won Cy Young.
He did. And they were like, "You're welcome, Mets fans. Merry Christmas." They literally posted that. It's like, what?
Wacha ended up being one of the best Mets free agent signings of the decade.
It's sad.
Giants projected lineup. We could project with Alonso. We'd go Jung Ho Lee, batting 1, playing in the outfield. Willie Adames. And then right now they have Wade batting 3rd, playing 1st. I could see Wade still batting 3rd, but not playing 1st, or Alonso moving to DH where Flores is in the 8th. But the top 5 there, he'd fit somewhere into the top 5 or 6 is Lee, Adames, Wade, Chapman, Tyler Fitzgerald, and Mikey Yastrzemski. So he would find a way into that top 6, obviously.
Yeah.
In the lineup. I don't know where Wade is capable of playing outside of 1st, but they'll figure it out.
Yeah, they could figure it. They'll figure it out and move Alonso into that lineup for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, that's whatever. Alonso, do you think he'll be back? Gun to your head, on the spot.
Gun to my head, yes, but
no guarantee.
Yeah, but I think they're seriously considering other options.
Yeah, no guarantee there. And then I think with Bregman, do you have a gut feeling here of where he goes? If
the Mets miss out on Alonso and he's not a Met, I hope he's with Detroit. I'd like to see them build on what they did last season. Go back with Hinch. I'd like that move. It makes the most sense. So I'd like to see Detroit.
Let's be honest. That team that we watched in the postseason, adding Alex Bregman and adding Gleyber Torres to your lineup, that's an immense improvement offensively.
They're not probably the favorite in the Central.
It almost sounds like I'm joking when I say that because Torres is included. I hate him, but that's a really good improvement on probably money that you're fine spending. Baez, I can't believe they still have that contract.
Yeah,
I can believe it because no one's taking it. But that contract, just every time you look at it, is so. It's just like I don't even know. It's like sour.
I thank God every day my team doesn't have it.
Yeah, your team could have had that.
Yeah.
I have a friend that actually opened a Javi Baez black jersey the Christmas after he signed with the Tigers that offseason. He got it ordered for him from whoever before the offseason really started for Christmas. And he loved Baez. And it was just kind of expected they'd re-sign him because Cohen was there and they traded for him. And they didn't re-sign him. And like 3 or 4 weeks after he's on the Tigers, he opens a Javi Baez black jersey.
I had a few friends that loved him. I mean, obsessed with him and wanted nothing more than for the Mets to bring him back. And I had battles with them. I was like, guys, we don't want Javi Baez back. I'm telling you, bringing Javi Baez back would be the wrong decision. And I don't think I've ever been more right on a sports opinion than that one. I actually don't.
Well, that trade was a bad one. I remember the day they traded for him. I remember where I was. That trade was a bad one because I thought it was from the second they made it. And whatever, in hindsight, at this point, they figured it out elsewhere. It's not like it's hindering the organization. But they made that move because Cohen wanted to make a deadline move, I think. He wanted to give the fans something to say, with me as the owner, with this group, we compete. We do not sell at the deadline while we're in a playoff race. We try to win at every stop we can. And that was the move for Baez. Is PCA going to even be a good player? I've been hearing about Pete Crow Armstrong for 5 years now. And it never, by the time August, September comes around, I'm not hearing about him anymore. So I don't know if he's even going to turn out to be that great player that people thought. I don't know if the Mets really lose anything in that deal. Pete Crow Armstrong has to be like 34 years old at this point. That's how I feel about.
Do you remember what
hype.
happened 2 days later, though? After they made the trade? Alderson came out and said DeGrom has a partially torn UCL. And then remember they got into the fight where DeGrom was like, I don't have a partially torn UCL. That is not true. But he actually did. And that was the moment I said, oh, DeGrom's leaving when he's a free agent. That's when I thought he was leaving. But if they had come out and said that 2 days earlier, that DeGrom was never coming back that year, then I would have honestly said, I'm good. Don't make a move, because they couldn't compete without DeGrom in the postseason.
No, you're right. That's I forgot about that. DeGrom's back this year. I think Texas is going to be a threat.
I think Texas is going to be a threat too.
Be the best or second best team in the AL after a year off. Let's pivot quick. AL, little Yankees here. We talked about the Astros before, but Texas 78-84 a year after winning the World Series. They'll get DeGrom back this season. I like them this year. Nobody's really talking about them too much. I've heard some people saying, hey, Texas could have a bounce back year, but I think it should be more prominent. You look at the rest of the teams in the AL, they're easily the third or fourth best roster, maybe the second best roster, maybe the best roster, Mike. I mean, they have a really good team on paper, and Texas could figure it out a year after just one struggling season after winning the World Series.
So I think they're going to win the division.
Yeah,
that's how strongly I feel about them. Offensively, they're going to be very, very good. I think a couple of bounce backs offensively aren't crazy. I think Garcia comes back and has a nice year here. I don't think you could expect much out of DeGrom, but if you get half of what you expect, I still think he's going to be a solid number 2 guy. They'll probably need to add a starter at the deadline, but offensively, this team is going to be dominant. I think there is a chance, Kevin, behind the Yankees, this is the second best team in the American League.
All right, so you look through the rest of this, though. Central, I don't think there's a contender to compete with those teams. Yankees, Astros, Rangers, whichever of those 3 teams are good, I don't think there's an AL Central team that is competing with them. Let's look at Baltimore as we start 2025. They've lost Corbin Burns. They're probably going to lose Santander. I don't think that there's much of a chance they bring him back, maybe a 25-30% chance. They're definitely meeting with him, but I don't think he's going to be back there. And nobody seems to think that. So Boston feels like a team in the mix, but with Baltimore to start 2025, they've had 2 years now of good regular seasons, great regular season 2 years ago, no playoff wins, not even in a series, not even in a game.
Right.
So Baltimore, am I right to be out on them?
I'm out on them. So, yeah, you would be right. What confidence do you have in this organization right now? I mean, they're going to come back with a couple of starting pitchers here that were banged up off of serious injuries and expect them to replace, even though it was sort of a down season for his standards, Corbin Burns at the top of the rotation. You signed Tyler O'Neill. Okay. I don't think he's going to match the 40 home runs that Anthony Santander hit, but okay, you sort of replaced him. But you have a chance here. You have a chance with some young stars on this roster to add around them while you're not paying them and fully go for a championship. The American League is wide open. I mean, yes, the Yankees are the top team, but a couple of moves here, a couple of moves there, we're talking about them as the second best team easily in the American League. So it's just been a massive fumble here by the Orioles over the past 2 off seasons now. Not spending money, not doing the right things, not making the right moves. It's upsetting to watch because I wanted to see this team really compete for the next few years and beyond.
And how about the new ownership? Your first task, we spoke about it, Mike, at least once a month on this show during the season. Your first task as owner, the first real one, fine, you can go get Burns. You can go and acquire him. Fine. Yep. But to not re-sign him is such a bad look because remember opening day last year, these guys buying beers for the fans outside of Camden Yards, and Orioles fans were so excited. Your first big test, can you re-sign Corbin Burns? didn't even sound like they made much of a push. He wanted to be in Arizona. I think that we've seen that documented. Likes living there, happy to play there. But Baltimore could have done so much more in this sweepstakes. And now you pivot, and the fans should at least be able to say, all right, we go get Santander now. And we lost out on Burns with the new owners. They're going to go get Santander, right? No, they're not. Absolutely not. You couldn't even re-sign Eloy Jimenez if you wanted to.
It's tough, though, because the reason why it's tough is because there were a few teams that said, hey, you know, we actually don't want to bring in Corbin Burns. I almost said Santander. You know, like, that's the tough part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't this coveted free agent that everybody wanted. Like, at the time, we thought, oh, this is going to be the top guy in the market. He's going to get $250 million plus. You know, the Mets, all the big teams are going to be in on him. And the Orioles are going to have to compete against the big boys. And they didn't have to. And maybe their baseball operations people were saying the same thing as the Mets people and the Yankees people and the Dodgers people, who all had needs at the top of the rotation and spent on pitchers at the top of the market, except the Mets, and chose other guys.
I think the most telling thing besides that, how many times did we say, if David Stearns isn't interested in Burns, something's wrong, because that seemed like the biggest layup for the Mets. But I think it was almost more telling in actual actions that we saw with the way the Yankees overpaid for Fried, because Snell was gone, and the Yankees, you would have thought, had two aces to fall back on in free agency after losing Soto. And they could have waited a few days to say, you know, do we want to get Burns? We want to get Fried. Who can we get at a better value? Maybe they completely prioritize the lefty. That's the only potential option that I'll give you. But they just didn't want Burns. They just wanted Fried. They wanted Fried, but they didn't want Burns either with an 8-year deal for Fried.
Well, they wanted Snell.
Yeah, I think every team that wanted a pitcher wanted Snell, I think.
And they couldn't get Snell because they did not have the Soto situation wrapped up. Dodgers didn't care. Dodgers put a great deal on the table, and Boris told the Yankees, hey, I got a good deal. I'm going to accept this unless you come with something. And they obviously, you know, they told Boris, hey, we can't give a contract out without knowing Soto's situation. That's why he was a Dodger. So the Yankees wanted both the top guys over Burns.
Yeah.
Factual.
They did not want Burns, and if they didn't want Burns, I assume that 12, 13, 14 other teams would have been in the same situation of, this is how we rank these free agents, whether we're going to pursue them or not. Burns is not at the top of this list. He's not even second on this list. The Dodgers, with the Hernandez contract and the Snell contract, these deferrals, nobody's running a better ship than the Dodgers. Obviously, that's evident with a World Series win, but they're paying all these players. They have the best roster in baseball, and most of the guys are not homegrown. They're mostly outside acquisitions, and they don't even hit that luxury tax, that Steve Cohen tax, that the Yankees and Mets have to live with hitting and losing a lot more money. The Dodgers don't even hit that because they have all these deferrals to avoid that. What do you think of every time you see a Dodgers contract? It says, well, 25 million, 30 million, 40 million, 50 million, 700 million has been deferred for the rest of the time that Earth exists. Does that frustrate you, or do you just say good on the Dodgers?
It frustrates me, but it's also good on the Dodgers because players are accepting contracts like that. And whether it hurts them or not, I mean, the Ohtani contract is actually like genius for both sides because Ohtani doesn't collect the income tax that he collect in LA. He's going to collect it where he lives in Arizona for 10 years. So that's actually a really smart play. And I'm almost shocked that players that play in these cities like LA and New York don't accept these contracts more. But either way, yeah, it's definitely frustrating a little bit, but it's also good on them because they are such a good organization that players are willing to accept these kinds of contracts.
Yep. Agree with that. I think that if every team can do it, they would. I just don't think that players are taking it anywhere else. There's a culture there that's been built, and Ohtani really established the deferral culture that they have by going there and deferring. I mean, what was it? It was literally what, 690 million, 680 million deferred. So he did that. Players are following suit. And
they are getting crushed. They are getting hit on the luxury tax a little bit, though.
They are, but they're not hitting that third threshold.
Are they not?
No, they're not. So they're in a spot where they're avoiding that third. Maybe after the Snell and Hernandez signings, they might be there.
I think this season they're going to.
They might be because they weren't this past year.
Yeah.
After all the Yamamoto, Ohtani spending spree, and of course you're paying Betts, Freeman, Smith. It's just insane that they were able to do that last year and avoid hitting that tax. But because they were third in payroll last year with the Mets and Yankees ahead of them, but the Dodgers they're just doing it better than everyone else. And
what's going to be really annoying is if they sign Sasaki. That's going to piss me off a little bit because
he's a really interesting free agent. But go ahead.
It's just like, how much better can you get? Like legally, how much better can you get within the rules? Like you're going to sign this guy too? Come on.
Do you think he's going to end up there?
I actually don't.
I don't either.
I actually think he's going to end up in San Diego.
I could see San Diego. It's going to be a West Coast team. I don't really think the Yankees or Mets have much of a shot.
I think they have a chance. I think there's a reason why he's considering them. I think he's different from Yamamoto, and I think he's different from Ohtani. I think he's a different animal, and I think he is considering the East Coast teams.
I still think it's going to be, Seattle or San Fran or San Diego here for Sasaki. I actually don't even know if he's met with San Fran, so you can take that one back.
I think he did.
But either way,
Phillies and Red Sox didn't get meetings.
No, they didn't. You're right. For a meeting, there's some interest, but we'll see if they get a second meeting, which is going to be revealed soon. I'd imagine. I think that they're already happening, but we haven't really heard about too many of them.
So the deadline is the 15th, but it's actually the 23rd.
Okay, how does that work?
I don't know, but I had read yesterday or the day before that the period, I guess, ends the 15th, but for some reason it's the 23rd. He has to be on a team signed.
Yeah, okay, so
we're going to get it in that window. And I think
which I'm sure is where you saw it. SNY does say January 23rd. So
but you're going to get it in that window of that week or two. In the next week or two, things are really going to start heating up and you're going to have an idea.
Okay. Oh, well, I guess the posting deadline is the 15th and the signing deadline is the 23rd.
Got you.
So you have to be posted between December 10th and the 15th, and you have to sign before the 23rd.
And he's been posted already.
Yeah, he was. I don't even know if he was technically posted. I think that they're using a different term for it because he is leaving early. Yeah. And he's getting shredded by the Japanese media. I don't know if you saw that, but he's getting...
They hate him.
Destroyed. They hate him so much for leaving because these guys, Yamamoto, Ohtani, Ichiro, I mean, they play their full term there and become legends. And Sasaki's leaving early, which you can't really blame him because you do your 6 years of arbitration, he's going to be up for a contract when he's 28. So, or your 6 years of service, he'll be up for a contract when he's 28. So instead of doing that, coming over and not knowing what you're going to be getting, you can get two good payouts from major league teams. You get another big contract when you're 28 and you'll get paid your whatever 40, 50, 60 million that he'd make if he's great in the 6 years prior. So I don't know. I actually know if his service time works that way. So I take it back. I don't know if his service time is the typical 6 years of an acquired player.
I interviewed Jim Duquette a couple months ago for the school, and I asked him if he hit the market right now as a regular free agent, how much money would he get? And I was thinking he's going to say like 500 million around there as a 23-year-old. He only said 4, but I think you're in that $400 to $500 million range if he was a regular free agent here.
He thinks he would get that much?
Yeah.
That's what he would go for? Wow.
I wouldn't even market.
Close to that. I would have said like maybe you'd get like 5 or 6 for. Well, yeah, because he'd get a 12 or 13 year deal
at $400 or $500 million. I believe that. I believe it. He's that good.
Yeah. No, I believe that.
Some people think he's the best pitcher in the world right now.
Yeah, he's a guy that teams want to get, and you get him for cheap. So everyone's in on him that he wants to be in, and that would be a huge ad for anybody who gets him because you don't have to pay him. It's crazy.
That's why
you can get a 23-year-old Cy Young by the end of next year, you have a 23-year-old ace stud that you don't have to pay any money to.
That's why it's so annoying if the Dodgers get him.
I know. That's
why it's the
really
worst.
frustrating. Throw us a bone. Throw us a bone, man.
Go to the Yankees. Go to the Mets. Come on. Come out here. It's great out here. You'll love it out east.
Got nothing going for him right now, man. We lost Soto.
Yeah.
we just got killed in the World Series. We got
Don't
nothing,
go to the
man.
team
We have
Rodon.
We need you. We need you, Sasaki. And you want to be a Yankee. You want Legacy, Monument Park.
Right, yeah. Those really matter to Juan Soto.
Judge. Yeah. Well, Soto's not a good guy. Sasaki's a good guy. Clearly.
Apparently, he had other issues with the Japanese media, too. Like, they really can't stand him.
No, I think
beforehand.
He seems, and I could be totally wrong, it seems as if Roki Sasaki has had off-the-field problems in Japan. Like, I'm not, no one's saying really publicizing too much of that, but it does not seem like he was the straightest shooter.
Kevin Bunk's internal investigations will be
there's something
released.
There's a little bit of something going on. I think I don't know. You know what? I take it back. Seemed like a great guy, Roki. Seemed like a great guy. Come to the Yankees. You become a legend.
Don't.
Next
you see what he just said about you? Look above his head. He's celebrating Yankee World Series championships.
This is where guys become better people. With the Yankees.
And clearly that happened with Soto, right?
No, he's not a good guy. He was not. You couldn't save him.
He's a
Look
great
at Domingo
guy.
Germán.
Now he's a
Domingo
Met.
Germán. Domingo Germán. Bad start to his career off the field. Has the domestic issue. Suspended.
Where are we going with this?
Perfect game for next year. Perfect game. Now he leaves, and he's a Pirates minor league pitcher. Look what happens. The grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Or maybe he stinks and he's a domestic abuser.
Yeah, he's a terrible person and a terrible pitcher. How did he throw a perfect game?
I'll never forget where I was.
I'll never forget where I was either. I was sleeping.
I was on a cruise in the middle of the ocean.
You love
watching Domingo Germán throw a perfect game.
I woke up to a bunch of texts about it, but think about if you're me. I worked that day, like 10-15. He's thrown 2 good innings here, 6 up, 6 down against the A's. It's Domingo. If Garrett Cole was out there, I'd say, let's just watch a little bit more. Domingo Germán with a 480 RA.
How shocking. When you woke up, have you woke up to any more shocking notification?
No, never. Never, ever in my life. I woke up and I was like, what even happened? What is going on? You know when you wake up sometimes and you're a little drowsy, you wake up maybe 2 or 3 in the morning and you're a little drowsy and you like have a dream, but you're kind of awake. And you wake up at 8 o'clock and at 8:30, you're like, did that actually happen?
Yep.
You have that moment of deja vu. That was how I felt with Germán. I was like, this is not real. This is not.
He didn't actually throw a perfect game.
There's no way that he threw a perfect game. And then I'm looking more, and then I go on Instagram, and the first thing is Domingo Germán's final out. And I was like, oh my God. It's real. The first text I woke up to was Brendan Gambeski texted me. And it was the first one on all my things. So, because I have all my other chats muted. So they weren't actually notifications on my phone when you first click. And I just had the Gambeski text. I'm like, that's weird. Gambeski texted me at like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And, a friend of mine, of course, good guy. Why we don't text at 1 a.m.
Yeah. And
so he texts me and he says, boy, I hope you weren't sleeping. I'm like, what? I'm like, did he butt dial me or something? And I think he accidentally woke me up. And then I open my phone and I have probably 250 texts from group chats. And it's all Domingo Germán, Domingo Germán, Domingo Germán. I'm like, what even? How did this even happen? And then I rewatched the whole game, the condensed game. I watched every pitch after because it was a perfect game.
Yeah. Domingo.
Did they win that 1-0 or was it 2-0?
I don't remember. I left the club on a cruise to watch the final out.
As you should. It's history.
Yeah. I don't regret it.
Perfect game. Oh, the Yankees won 11-0, not 1-0. That's typical of the Yankees. That's kind of how they win games.
Right. Sure.
11-0. All right, you got anything else here on free agency that you want to?
Looking for my adapter that I dropped on the floor. Sorry.
What did you think? We haven't spoken about it. Yankees Goldschmidt over Walker at first base. Not that, I mean, I don't really think that they had much of a shot at Walker there, just based on what they wanted to do anyways. I don't think that was ever really true smoke, but
they didn't want Walker. I'm fine with Goldschmidt trying to unlock something. He's still good defensively. I'm good with it. They haven't gotten much production anyway, and listen, Ben Rice, a young player. I'm not confident in him. I don't think he's going to be very good, but we'll have a chance to play here a little bit.
Yeah.
So
last time the Yankees got a home run from a first baseman was July 4th.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So you couldn't even, because Rizzo was only hitting singles at the end. He couldn't put it anywhere else. He was choked up halfway up the bat.
So you're saying anything's better?
Anything's better. And Rice sucked, but Goldschmidt could be terrible. That's a complete reality of this. Is he could drop to a sub 620 OPS guy and be like DJ LeMahieu. But Goldschmidt's also pretty athletic still. That's what I think is missed with Goldie, is I think he stole 10, 12 bases last year. I mean, he's a really good athlete still. And you're going to get good at bats. So
it also wouldn't be shocking if, listen, he's not going to have an MVP kind of season, obviously, but if he did bounce back a little bit and have a nice year here, that wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world.
Resurgence, 245 with 24, 25 home runs and 78 RBIs.
Nobody's blinking an eye at that.
330 plus on base. That's not a huge shock out of the 6-7 spot in the Yankees lineup. One more thing I do want to just quick with the Yankees. Yeah. I think we're both at a point where we agree. I know you are, but we agree that the big third base move is not coming. Maybe they get a guy like Ha-Seong Kim, but I do think Nolan Arenado is not out of the question yet. I think that they are checking in on that. I think it's something they're monitoring. The Cardinals right now haven't done too much with that. I think they're waiting for Bregman to sign and to see who really needs third baseman, wait for Alonso to sign, who needs corner infielders, and then Arenado will get moved. I do think Arenado wants to be on the Dodgers, and I've thought that the whole way, but I don't think he's a guy that the Yankees are actually out on.
No. I think if the right, they haven't traded big prospects this offseason. So, a trade is, when we did the plan A, plan B thing with the Yankees a few weeks ago, we were expecting the Yankees to trade decent prospects to get Bellinger. They traded nothing for Bellinger. Yep. So maybe they trade a couple of prospects and split the cost with the Cardinals.
That could happen. They also are going to get rid of Stroman at some point. It's so obvious that he's not on their opening day roster. I don't know if they can save much money, though, with the way they're going to have to get rid of him, but they're going to get rid of him.
Stroman. Bring him back to New York, the Mets there.
Queens.
Yeah, bring him back to Queens.
That's where all the great players go, right? Stroman?
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing, too. All the great players go there, so you could take Stroman back.
But I would agree. Like, Bregman's not coming, obviously. They're not signing Bregman. So
no, they're not. Bregman's totally out. I could see them signing Kim, but I think he ends up back in San Diego.
Yeah. Or West.
I just don't think it's going to be the Yankees, but that level player, sure. But is there a chance you think they go into opening day with a competition of Cabrera and LeMahieu at third?
That would be a problem.
That's a problem. That's where I run into an issue, is if that's what I like Cabrera, but he's a pure utility bench guy.
Yeah.
And that's good. You want a guy like that on your team that can play 5 positions and hit 230 for you, but he cannot be after the production you lost with Soto, going to the World Series, trying to appease this fan base because you lost Soto to the Mets. You're trying to replace the third MVP finisher. You've replaced about half of his production with Bellinger and Goldschmidt. But that is not good enough at all. You need to get another guy in here to replace that other 25%.
So you're okay with Arenado here?
You actually turned me on to the idea of Arenado. I think that Arenado is a very good fit for the Yankees because he's only here for 2 years. Yep. You don't have to commit long-term to a guy like Bregman that, in the case of the Mets, I do feel differently about their ability to pivot when a contract gets bad. I don't know if the Yankees are in that spot. DJ LeMahieu's still on their team, so I don't know if the Yankees are in a spot where a Bregman contract sucks in 4 years that they can buy him out or just get rid of him. It's just not the way that I think they do business. No, Arenado will give you 2 solid years.
That makes sense. I think I don't want Jazz a third. I mean, I can't go into this season with Jazz a third.
No, I want him
is there
at second.
another move that we're not, because we're talking about these moves, and there's always a move, right, that we're not looking at. You know what I mean? And then these teams are making.
The one guy that I looked at that I've said could see him getting moved, third baseman, is Royce Lewis from Minnesota. Young player, always injured. You'd have to give up a good prospect because he's good when he plays. And he had a great stretch of the year last year where he was finally healthy. I could see Royce Lewis getting traded. Yohan Moncada is still a free agent, I believe. Do you roll the dice on a guy like that? I wouldn't. But
no,
this
probably
this is the type of situation they're in now.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. You're definitely right about that. Like, I'm not making that, because then I would just go with Cabrera. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's almost the same player. Moncada has more upside, but it's not promising.
It's going to be interesting. Cashman's still got some work to do. I completely forgot the Yankees don't have a third baseman coming into this episode, so that's good.
Yeah, and I agree with you, because you do all this stuff that's great for the defense. I mean, the outfield is great defensively now, or at least very good defensively, with Bellinger and Judge in the corners, and then Dominguez in center, and then Goldschmidt at first is a huge upgrade over Rizzo, who struggled defensively last year, and Rice, who's not good defensively. Volpe is good at short. Wells is good behind the plate. Jazz is a very good second baseman. I'd like to keep him there for a whole season. But then at third base, if you don't get one, and Jazz has to go to third, and he's an average at best third baseman, and then you don't have good defense at second, you don't feel good about where you are all of a sudden. Because Volpe, everybody loves to say, oh, well, he won a Gold Glove. Juan Soto got nominated for the Gold Glove this year. The Gold Glove means very little to me.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, listen, he's a good defender. Like, I'm not sitting there saying he's not a good defender. He's a good defender.
He is, but he's not great. And if the guys at second and third are not good at second and third, Volpe becomes worse at short.
Cash. Look at Cash having some work to do here late
He's
in the
got work to do
offseason.
here. He has some work to do here. And I don't want this to be the type of thing where you say, oh, well, we like Cabrera and we can just upgrade at the deadline. Can't really do that. Because hypothetically, I'm just throwing this one out there. I don't think it would happen. You go get Luis Arias and you say he's playing second base.
Yeah.
That's your move once you get a guy like Luis Arias at second base, you're no longer making any more moves for your lineup. Your lineup's set. Your defense sucks. Because Chisholm's playing third and your second baseman's not good at second base. So that is a problem right now. They have an issue right now with they have to get a third baseman. And I feel like Arenado just makes the most sense.
You just signed a big ground ball pitcher.
In order to move Arenado or move for Arenado, you have to be able to move Stroman somehow. And the Cardinals aren't taking that.
It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
It is. You can call it on that note. It's a fascinating note to finish on. All good?
I'm all good. I'd like Alonso to sign. That's all I'm going to say. I feel like it's going to be a little while, though.
Alonso might be one of those Boris clients that waits until mid-February. Until late February, annoying. Maybe even March. I could see him being the last guy to really fall.
I said that during the season.
Yeah, because of the year he had. I
said that in the middle of the season. I'm like, he's not going to sign until late.
Year he had, he's not going to get what he wanted. We knew that, and now he's just sitting out here, and he's still. It's Burns is gone, Soto's gone, Tucker's been traded, Bregman's going to be gone.
Right.
Bellinger's been traded. Walker's gone, Santana's gone, Goldschmidt's gone, and we're still not sitting here saying, all right, Alonso's market's starting to heat up. All these teams are starting to check in on him. There's stories about him now. Still hasn't come up for him yet.
He's going to be a Met.
He's going to be a Met. He's not going to be a Met. If they sign Bregman next week, do you just automatically you're like, Alonso's gone?
Yeah.
It has to.
I don't see fit.
It would get way too crowded with Vientos and Alonso and Bregman and everyone that you have.
I'll tell you this, I'm sick of football and I'm ready to go full baseball.
Yeah, I'm pumped for baseball. I'm not sick of football. I'm actually now starting to get into football as the Jets season ends and the playoffs begin. Now I'm starting to get excited about football for the first time all year because New York football. Well, you got to be pumped about the win though this week, man.
You're right, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, Giants, huge win. You got to be pumped. Then you're going to get
They're going to
another
win
one.
again.
What do you think? I know this is the Burrows. What do you think of them benching Saquon for that game?
I think they had to.
It's tough. I'm 50-50 because I would at least given him a half to see if he can get 75, 80 yards and a half.
Yeah, you know what? It's like the record, extra game. It's I don't know. I'm not fully into it. I'm not. I think it's a watered down record anyway if he breaks it, because you have OJ. I think you brought up OJ. We did recap on Monday. Dickerson did it in 16, saying you do it in 17, you're going to risk injury when you haven't had a week's bye since week 5. I'm not sending him out there.
But the other side of the coin always is if Barkley tears his ACL in the first half against the Giants in week 18 and the Eagles lose the next week, Sirianni is going to get eviscerated for an entire offseason.
Well, it's like they've messed up the last 2 years when they've had when they've won and they've clinched. They've messed up who to play and not to play week 18. And it's funny, all 3 of them now have been against the Giants.
Yeah.
They played the starters against the Giants backups, and they looked like crap the year the Giants went to the playoffs. Last year, Brown got dinged up, and they got killed by the Giants and Tyrod Taylor. And then you have this year. Now he's just sitting them, which I think is the right choice.
Yeah. Good point. All right, wrap it. We'll finish it on Sunday recap. Last Sunday recap of the year on Sunday. Coast to Coast comes back next week, a week from today. We'll be back on Thursday. Burrows will be back, of course. You can check us out now. Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, we'll be out there.
Excited to be on Apple Podcasts. Always YouTube and Instagram Live. What other shows do we do? The Hardline, new episode came out on Monday night. Great episode. Or on Tuesday morning, new episode came out. So great episode. Go check it out. That's all football. That'll give you your football fix for the week. That's Mike and JM. And we'll be back on next show is Sunday. Do you have a gambling show this week?
No gambling show this week. We'll see you Sunday or Monday. I might be in Philly for Giants Eagles. I might be. So might have to go Monday.
You're going to go see the Giants get their win, get their 4th win of the year.
I don't know yet.
Nice.
We'll see.
So we will be in some capacity Sunday or Monday. Maybe Monday we do it, see all the coach firings and everything. But we'll also be announcing some new stuff on the Instagram. So stay tuned for that. And we will see you on Sunday or Monday for the last week of football. Thanks for sticking around.